It's Overreaction Friday here on the Commanders Report, and today I've had the opportunity to boot up the film and watch it and really take in everything that happened from an all-22 perspective. And today I got 6 takeaways from that loss against the Philadelphia Eagles on Thursday Night Football last night that I want to share with you guys. Before we get into the content today, though, get us off on the right foot here by going down there in the comments section and letting me know, what is your concern level after these last 2 losses against the Steelers and the Eagles, respectively? Put it on a scale from 1, meaning not worried whatsoever, to 10, meaning I'm absolutely panicking right now. Let me know how you guys are feeling down there in the comments section. So my first takeaway here is that Jayden Daniels needs to be better. And I am a little bit concerned about Jayden, but I'm more concerned about him not being fully healthy at this point, because over these last 4 games since returning from that rib injury that he suffered against the Panthers, he's progressively gotten worse. Now, it is worth mentioning here, the defenses that the Commanders have played so far, over the last month, have been very good defenses. 3 of them are in the top 5 in scoring defense, and that includes a Steelers team before they had to play on a short week, an Eagles team here that's second in scoring defense, and then they just had to play the Eagles, who are 6th in scoring defense last night. So it's definitely a tough stretch for Jayden Daniels, some tough defenses to go up against for a rookie quarterback. But the numbers have definitely decreased, and the accuracy in particular is definitely noticeably worse over the last 2 games against the Steelers and the Eagles. The completion percentage has gone down and dipped below 60%. The yards per attempt have gone down dramatically. The yards per game are under 200 now, and then he's only had 1 total touchdown to 1 interception here over the last 2 games. And when it comes to the rushing, it's not much better, right? In fact, the decrease is similar with his legs as well. 10 carries for just 23 yards and no touchdowns over these last 2 contests. Now, the Steelers and Eagles, like I've been saying, guys, they do a good job corralling these quarterbacks. They do a good job keeping a lid on opposing offenses. But if the Commanders want to go into the playoffs and beat good teams in the playoffs with their offense, they're going to have to face good defenses. And these last 2 weeks, Jayden Daniels has not risen to the occasion. And you take a look here at the pretty big step backwards these last 2 weeks from Jayden Daniels in the first 9 games of the year versus the last 2 games. Versus the Steelers and Eagles. He was completing 71.4% of his passes. That is extremely, extremely high. And now that it's dipped below 60, it's definitely a little bit of a concern there. The passing yards per attempt almost cut in half here over the last 2 games. The passing yards per game have certainly gone down as well. And then also with the rushing, right? The yards per attempt on the ground have cut in half as well. And then also the rushing yards per game are 5 times lower than what it was in the first 9 games. We're used to seeing Jayden Daniels be able to pick up these first downs, move the chains on third when there's nothing open. That hasn't really been the case here over the last 2 games. And what is particularly concerning here is that Jayden's gotten progressively worse over these 4 games, where, Chicago and New York, he was actually playing okay off of that injury, but it seems like the further we get away from that injury, the worse and worse his discomfort is getting, and it's leading to a lower level of accuracy and a lower level of production for Jayden Daniels. And we can see that here with his stats from the first 2 games he had off of that rib injury, where he actually played pretty darn well. The completion percentage went down a little bit, but the yards per attempt was still very good. And then the yards per game was meeting what the average was for the season to that point. He had 3 touchdowns to no interceptions. And again, that's against a really good Chicago Bears defense there in week 8, and the Giants are no slouch in week 9 either. So Daniels was looking pretty good off of that injury, but these last 2 weeks, that injury certainly seems to be affecting his accuracy, and it's affecting the way that he runs the football as well. You guys can see here that Jayden Daniels, coming off of that rib injury, was still running the football at a pretty decent clip at 87 yards on 16 carries, and we haven't seen him score a touchdown on the ground in quite some time. I'm hoping that we can see Jayden get into the end zone as a rusher here pretty soon, and that he can get his mojo back as a rusher. But the big thing for Jayden moving forward here is that he needs to get better, all right? Those ribs need to heal up, and honestly, you can tell on film that Jayden's throwing mechanics are getting a bit wonky now because of the discomfort he's feeling in his midsection. If you know anything about, these midsection injuries and ribs, all these different things, it can make rotating extremely uncomfortable for quarterbacks. And right now you can certainly see that Jayden is not rotating in the same fashion as he was earlier in the year, and it's affecting his throwing mechanics, which of course is affecting his accuracy. So you do have the mini bye here, which should help Jayden get more and more healthy as we approach Week 12 against the Dallas Cowboys. But this cannot become the norm for Jayden Daniels if this team wants to not only be a title contender this year, but even make the playoffs here in 2024. So fill in the blank for me down there in the comments section. Where do you guys rank Jayden Daniels among top NFL quarterbacks today? Do you think he's a top 5 quarterback? Do you think he's a top 10? Do you think he's overrated? Let me know what you guys think down there in the comment section for today's pinned comment. YouTube's going to throw you an ad break here in just a couple of seconds. And when that happens, take advantage of that time by letting me know where you rank Jayden Daniels among NFL quarterbacks. Another thing to talk about here is Kliff Kingsbury here, the offensive coordinator. And there's a phenomenon from Kliff that dates all the way back to 2013 here, which is called Kliff's Kliff, okay? And what that's referring to is that once offenses coordinated and play called by Kliff Kingsbury gets past Week 7 in their season, they fall off a cliff and they start losing a bunch of games. So going back to 2013, when Kliff has been the main offensive play caller for a team, whether it be college or pro, his teams are now 19-54 in games after Week 7. Okay, that is abysmal. That's a 26% win percentage. Now, obviously, Kliff isn't in charge of the defense or anything like that here in Washington, but the offense, since that Week 7 mark, has definitely gone down in production. Now, obviously, that coincides with Jayden Daniels' injury, and of course, Jayden's struggles are going to be Kliff's struggles. So it's certainly possible here that once Jayden gets back on the horse, he starts getting more and more healthy, and he gets closer and closer to the version we saw from him in the first half of the season, that the wins are going to start following. So I'm not really pressing the panic button on Kliff at this point, but this is a trend with Kliff Kingsbury where defenses tend to figure out his schemes and then he fails to adjust in middle of the seasons, and it ends in some pretty lackluster results towards the end of these seasons. So hopefully Kliff is able to turn it around in the weeks to come. Another thing on offense that is really concerning when I watched the film this morning was that Brandon Coleman and Andrew Wiley, the tackles last night, played absolutely atrociously, all right? And I understand Philly is super talented, and I understand that the Commanders are coming off a super physical matchup against that Steelers pass rush in Week 10. But, I mean, the technique was awful on both of them. They were giving up quick pressures and quick losses in the run game as well. They were out of position time and time again as well. And, with Cornelius Lucas back to healthy, I think that Dan Quinn and Kliff Kingsbury really need to think about playing Cornelius Lucas over Brandon Coleman, who is definitely showing some rookie warts. He's had some good moments this year, but going up against some really top-end edge rushers over these last several weeks, he's been getting exposed a little bit here. So maybe this offensive line has exceeded expectations from my perspective. I thought they were going to be terrible coming into this year, but they're starting to show some of those warts here, and I'm just hoping that this offensive line was just gas last week, right? It is extremely difficult to go from playing the Steelers to playing another physical team in the Eagles just 4 days later, so hopefully that's what it was, and they were just tired, and hopefully going into that Cowboys game, they're going to be just fine, but I can't say I'm not concerned about the offensive line and specifically the starting tackles at this point in the season. So coming up here on the Commanders Report, I got 2 defensive standouts that really stood out to me on the defensive film this week against the Philadelphia Eagles. Before I break down who those 2 standouts are, if you guys want to rock the Dan Quinn backwards hat look on Commanders game days this year, you guys can get a brand new Washington Commanders ball cap from our friends at Fanatics at a great price when you use our code, or when you use our link, I should say, chatsports.com/DQ. If you guys use that link, it's right down there below me, and it's also in the comments and description of today's show. It's going to help out the channel if you make a purchase. So if you click that link, you make a purchase, Fanatics is going to send us part of the proceeds to help out our channel. So if you guys want a brand new Washington Commanders ball cap, if you want to give it to somebody, a Commanders fan in your life that could really use a ball cap in their life right now, go ahead and go to chatsports.com/DQ to get this hat in your closet today. The first defensive standout I want to give a big shout out to is Frankie Louvu, who has been phenomenal for the Commanders this year, man. It seems like every single week I am praising Frankie Louvu's a performance in a football game, all right? And the reason, and that is well warranted, okay? Because Louvu is an inside linebacker. He plays a majority of his snaps as an inside backer, off-ball linebacker, and then in obvious passing situations, he changes into a designated pass rusher, where he is arguably this team's most productive pass rusher on the team, and he's not even a full-time edge. I mean, it's just absolutely phenomenal he's able to do. He had 2 sacks last night, 2 tackles for losses as well, and he hit the quarterback 3 times for a total of 10 tackles. This guy's flying all over the place. He's an absolute menace, both as an off-ball and on-ball linebacker. I'm loving what I'm seeing on Frankie Lulu's tape, and I've been saying it all season, guys. This guy is a first-team All-Pro linebacker, in my opinion. Then another player that really impressed me last night, and he's been impressing me here over the last several weeks on the outside, is Mike Sainristil. And there's a lot of people coming into the league here when they were talking about Sainristil, said he was a slot-only guy, couldn't survive on the outside. Well, Mike has certainly proved that notion wrong over the last several weeks. He was able to get 2 pass breakups against A.J. Brown last night. He did allow 1 kind of big reception on the first drive of the game to AJ, but that was really it. I thought he held up in coverage extremely well. He played with good eyes and good instincts, collected 6 tackles as well. So I'm really enjoying what I'm seeing from Mike Sainristil. Now, I think that when Marshawn Lattimore joins the rotation here in Week 12 against the Cowboys, I actually think Sainristil is going to move into the slot more often than not, and Benjamin St-Juste will be the other outside corner against most teams. But I'm really loving what I've seen from Mike Sainristil, and he certainly brings the versatility to be kind of that versatile weapon that this Commanders defense could certainly use. Then the final thing that I want to talk about today is this team a limited team? Is this team a fraudulent Super Bowl or playoff contender? All right, and this is going to be something you hear a lot on the national media circuit here, and, the Commanders aren't that good, and they haven't beaten anybody, and all these different things. And you know what? They do have a point, because you look at the teams that the Commanders have beaten this year, and their win percentage, it's sitting at 33.8%. That's abysmal, okay? So you really haven't played anybody that good, and honestly, probably the most impressive win that you have so far this year is the Arizona Cardinals on the road when you killed them. And that's a pretty decent football team. So that's honestly your best win right now, but pretty much all the other teams that you have beaten, the Giants twice, other teams that the Commanders, the Panthers, all these teams that the Commanders have beaten up on, they're not good football teams. They're not winning football games. So there's certainly a point here that these national pundits are going to make that they really haven't beaten anybody. And then, you look also at the teams that the Commanders have lost to. All right, the teams that have been victorious against the Washington Commanders, their win percentage is 66.6. So the narrative on this team is that this team can't beat good football teams. They can't beat winning football teams. And right now, when you look at the numbers and you look at what the Commanders have done, I mean, it's hard to refute that claim. And it's also worth mentioning here that Washington is a Hail Mary, a miraculous play away right now from being 6-5 and losing that game in Week 8 versus the Chicago Bears. And the reason why you're sitting at 7-4 and you're still in a very good spot to make the playoffs right now is because of that play. Okay, so, I mean, it's certainly fair to criticize this Washington Commanders team, and the doubters are going to keep talking, guys, all right? And what I want you guys to do is to not listen to those guys and stay focused on this team specifically, because I'm not too worried about this team, all right? I just laid out all the reasons why you should be skeptical, and despite those reasons, I think that this team is going to be a playoff team and that they're going to be just fine. I think a lot of people are panicking after last night's loss because this team did not look good on film last night. That is definitely the case, but you also have to realize that the Pittsburgh Steelers coming off a game against that team is pretty much a death sentence for the next week, especially if you're playing another physical team like the Eagles on a short week. Right now, teams in the NFL that play the Steelers and then play another team the following week are 0-7. Teams do not play the Steelers and then win games the following week. It takes everything to play that football team out of you, and then especially when you have a short week game against a division rival on the road, it's going to be very difficult to play a full and complete game of football on that short week. So right now, I think that you can really chalk this loss to the Eagles up to fatigue, and they just kind of ran out of gas. But you look at the remaining schedule here for the Commanders, and they've got a very favorable schedule moving forward. You're sitting in a good spot here at 7-4, and really if you get 3 more wins and you get to 10 wins, that's going to put you in a really good spot to make the playoffs as a wild card. You got the Cowboys and the Titans at home the next 2 games. I think those are 2 very winnable football games. Then you have the bye, so Jayden Daniels can get fully healthy for this final stretch. Then you have the Saints, who stink, on the road. You've got the Eagles at home. That's going to be your next kind of high-caliber football game, and I actually think the Commanders are going to be well-positioned to really compete in that game and try to pull off the upset. Then you got the Falcons at home, so it's going to be cold. A dome team is going to be playing in Landover, Maryland. I like the Washington Commanders' chances in that one. Then you play the stinky Cowboys again right at the end of the season. So I think that the Commanders have a reasonable chance. In fact, I would probably say the Commanders might be favorites in every game to finish out the year except for the Eagles game at this point. So if we look at the schedule and we expect one more loss for the entire rest of the way, the Commanders are going to be sitting at 12-5, all right? And you can even give or take a loss here, and you could go to 11-6, and that would still definitely put you in place to be a playoff team in the NFC this year. Now, will they win the division? I don't know, man. The Eagles are a good football team. They got a game-and-a-half lead. You're definitely going to have to beat the Eagles at home to even have a shot at the division. But what I know and what I do believe is that this Commanders team is a playoff team this year. They will make the playoffs, and, will it be as a wild card or as a division champion? We'll have to find out the answer to that question. And I don't think that they're going to be title contenders this year. I think that with the lack of talent on the offensive line and certain spots on defense, that this team's ceiling is a little bit limited, especially with a rookie quarterback and a first-year head coach. But you can certainly see the wheels turning here, and I do think this is a good football team. I think this is going to be a Super Bowl contender as early as next season. And, if you get to the playoffs and you compete in a playoff game, I think that is a very, very solid start to the Dan Quinn and Jayden Daniels eras here in Washington, even though this year they might be a little bit limited. So let me know down there in the comments section, can the Commanders win a Super Bowl this year with Jayden Daniels, a rookie quarterback, and Dan Quinn, a first-year head coach here in Washington? Give me a yes or a no. Do you still believe this team can win a title? Let me know what you guys think down there in the comments section by giving me a yes or a no. If you made it to the end of today's show, guys, that makes you a real one. So identify yourself down there in the comments section. It really does help out the YouTube algorithm when you guys make it to the end of these videos, guys. It tells the YouTube algorithm that you enjoy our content and that you stuck around to the end of today's show. So let me know who the real ones are down there in the comments section. I appreciate your guys' support. Make sure you guys click that subscribe button. Enjoy your weekends. Enjoy the NFL action on Sunday as well. I'll see you guys again on Monday with our latest coverage on the Washington Commanders. Can't wait for them. And if you guys want extensive Commanders coverage all throughout the 2024 season, click that subscribe button right now.